Hello, I'm Nahshondion. You're watching Transbrations. In celebration and honor of Black History Month, today's special guest is Lisafunderburke Hoffman. She's a systems thinker and coalition builder whose work and research examines equitable engagement. A dynamic facilitator, she works with residencies, foundations, and other nonprofits on developing effective strategy and improving the efficacy of teams and programs. A scientist by training, she served as an herbarium collections manager and public school educator, and has held leadership posts at McColl Center for Art and Innovation and Charlotte Nature Museum, among others. Lisa's currently on the Grantmakers in the Arts Individual Artists Committee and serves on the board of the National Assembly of State Arts Agencies, Rustle Lab, and Orion Magazine, and is the president and CEO of Artists Communities Alliance. Thank you for joining me today. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful, Nahshon. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm okay. In 2016, ACA hired its first Black female executive director, with the board signaling that a change needed to happen within the organization and within the field itself. ACA could no longer idly witness from the sidelines the perpetuation of white body supremacy, but needed to embody and represent the diversity of artists within the artist residency field. And artist communities and residencies were first documented in the 19th century as informal efforts to create workspace for painters, writers, and composers. In the 20th century, these efforts became more formalized. For decades, there were a limited number of residencies, and they were predominantly based on the rural retreat model of providing white artists with seclusion. I'm gonna say that again. It was for providing white artists with seclusion and limited public interaction. In the so to so many degrees, it was just another form of segregation.
Right.
Yeah. In the late 1970s and 80s, the field saw a significant increase in the number and types of residencies, urban residencies, workspace programs for local artists, community art residencies, and larger institutions that created residencies as an additional programming component. However, artist residencies continued the practice of exclusion and marginal support of Black, Indigenous, and other artists of colors and disabled artists. So, knowing the artist residency community history of exclusionary practices towards BIPOC and disabled artists, what was your approach?
You know, one, it was tough because I had my personal experiences, right? And I was like, I know what I've experienced, but I also know how I've been transformed, right? Like, so that duality can exist and does very much exist in the world. We can be in oppressive systems and still be transformed, right? And I came to this space and I still was carrying a lot of baggage with me about, you know, when you're operating something down South, and people say North Carolina is the new South, it's the old South to me, right? Like it can be very oppressive, very much a good old boys network, and you got to be careful what you say. Almost that strategy of surviving in that environment, I somewhat leveraged that, but I was able to bring fully me into that space. So less of browbeating or trying to get people, like force people along or shame people into it. You know, I just started with the basic tenets that I know bring us together and unite us, that, you know, that we could love, like that we can be transformed, that we can make mistakes, that we can forgive, but that we have to do this together. And the opportunity was here. And at that time, it was prescient. I was like, I knew it, I felt it because I had been so close to it and so proximal to it during my time at McColl Center. As a field, I was saying it's on its way, but we can love our way into this. We can we can bring our hearts, bodies, and minds, like Sister King said, and think about what we may actually be able to do for this and do differently. And some of the old members were like, and then some of the new members were like, thank you. But by and large, most people said, well, we're going to hang around and listen. And that meant a lot, because even if you didn't agree, you were receptive to listening. We didn't lose membership. We didn't lose folks. In a lot of ways, I said, listen, we got to build relationships and we got to love our way into this. So I just took what I know, talking to people, and trying to love as much as I can and let go of what you know, those things that I hold in me that sometimes show up as anger, and try not to bring that to the forefront. I try, what does Thich Nhat Hanh say? Try to like cradle the baby, like hold the baby of anger, soothe that anger and come from a different approach. And
Lisa,
yes,
they're still listening.
Yeah, yes. It's been I had a leader that met my first conference. She said, I heard you up there talking about love and equity. And she said, she doesn't know anything about us. She doesn't know anything about this field. And I visited with her this past summer and she said, I'm so glad you did. And you have changed my life. And this is an older person who I think highly of their program. They've done some excellent work. They're not one of those places where you hear a history of harm and hurt and abuse. They were just, they just operate. But they are now even doing even more. So that meant a lot. Like just that side conversation and that minute to hear it is what you need to kind of say, I'm going to keep, like, I'm in this. We're here and we're doing this work.
How does ACA unite the people who power artist residencies and inspire the field?
Through relationships and networking, obviously that's the core of our identity. I met you at a conference, and our way of coming together, being together, listening to each other is really the truth of our identity. That happens at residencies, that happens when residency workers come together, it happens when artists and residency practitioners get together. So it's all about, we really work on fostering those relationships and doing more of that. And then the other side of it is really giving some very practical, low barrier to participation tips and tools on how to engage and strengthen relationships. I mean, so many places act like want you to go, you're here, and they trying to take you way over here, and you don't have any idea on even how to even move an inch forward. So we concentrate on those inches because we recognize people on different parts of the journey. Try to do it with love and care, and it's worked. People stay with us, and we're not always right. We make mistakes, but by showing and modeling that behavior, it helps others do the same thing. So yeah.
And the conference started in 1996.
Yeah.
1996. And it brings together arts leaders, community organizers, funders, policymakers, educators, and cross-sector partners from around the globe to gather in various cities across the United States. Each conference features interactive workshops on organizational development, interviews with artists on creative practice, and conversations exploring the future of the residency field, as well as tours and events to promote connectivity and learning. I was at an event with the National Association of Latino Arts and Cultures, and an employee named Rebecca Beltran of the United States Artists told me about the Alliance, and that Dina Haggag was going to be there speaking, and I was like, I gotta go. I went in 2017. It was in Denver, Colorado. I don't remember the theme. I met you, and I met a lady named Naomi Schleichman, who's an artist and arts administrator in Fergus Falls, Minnesota. Her and another lady, they gave a presentation about the artist residency. First of all, I had never really known about artist residencies. I didn't really, know how to access them.
Right.
To my knowledge, had never met anyone who I had a conversation with who told me this is what an artist residency is. This is how I got it. So I was blown away, kind of bonded with Naomi to a degree. I have a sister named Naomi. I applied for the Hinge Artist Residency at Kirkbride, which is a former mental, it's on the grounds of a former mental hospital. And everything was great at that conference. And while I was there, I remember that's the time when the situation happened in Vegas, the mass shooting. So it kind of shifted the mood of the conference to a degree. The food was great. The socialization, everything was great. I liked it. I was like, what? I could see myself, attending more events like that. So went to the next one in 2018. I got a grant from California, CCI. I got a grant from a culture center in California to go. And I went in 2018. But prior to that, I had applied for the Hinge Artist Residency. And so while I was there, Naomi told me that I was awarded the Hinge Artist Residency, which was a really great experience.
Hinge Arts is a residency program that Springboard launched as a response to some of the challenges that the community was dealing with in figuring out the future of the Fergus Falls State Hospital. It closed in the early 2000s, and in 2011 this was the #1 topic that the community was really grappling with. And so we saw this opportunity to invite artists to come and live on the campus of the state hospital and to work in the community of Fergus Falls. We really believed that artists could be a big part of reimagining this place.
When the artists do arrive on their first day, I give them a little drive around Fergus Falls so that they can see where everything is. We provide them with a beautiful apartment that's fully furnished, and then we also provide them with studio space. After their arrival, we have a community potluck meet and greet where we invite community members to come in and meet the artists, share food, share conversations, and for the artists to share what they're going to be working on while they are here. Just making sure that they feel at home is the most important for us, because this is their home for anywhere from 2 to 12 weeks.
After a couple of years where the artists only did projects about the Kirkbride building, we started opening up the invitation. Today we have a career development track where artists can come do whatever they would like to spend time on. The other track we have is called Homecoming, which is specifically for artists who grew up in West Central Minnesota but now live elsewhere. Artists that do the Homecoming residency receive project support while they're here, so we ask them to come up with an idea of a project they'd like to do in collaboration with their community. Our hope is that they use their art to facilitate conversations about what is happening here in the community.
I always thought of this place as a nostalgic childhood place, this physical cabin, which is kind of the keeper of my family's history, but I didn't see how my artistic life and my artistic career intersected with this place until the residency. It showed me how much support there is for artists here, how valued artists are in this community, in this area, and it's made a huge impact on my practice and my life in general.
Anytime you see things through an artist's eyes, I think it opens up possibilities of what can be. I remember one artist did photography, different views of the campus, and we have one that's hanging in our shop, and it's simple in a way, but it's from someone else's perspective. And I truly believe that the Hinge residency program, being stationed there, is one of the reasons that we were able to find a solution to save the most historic parts of that campus.
I think in a small town it can be really easy to forget what is so great about where you live, and so having artists arrive here and help us kind of see where we live through fresh eyes really promotes the pride that I think we need to live up to our potential as a community.
But rewinding, while I was at the 2017 one, I had met Jan Williamson, who's the executive director of 18th Street Art Center, which is the largest, well, the oldest and biggest artist residency in Southern California. So that was nice. Real quick, in 2018, the theme was Generosity in Practice, Navigating 21st Century Challenges, and it explored how artist residencies and artist-centered spaces navigated rapid technological advancement, greater demands on staff, and artists due to shrinking resources and heightened responsibility to respond to social and political issues.
Mm-hmm.
And at Fergus Falls, that artist residency was great. It was snowing. I had a great time. It was beautiful. And I regret that I didn't get to record myself there, but it had a really great time. Rode by the area where they were filming Prince's, they filmed Purple Rain.
Right.
Everybody was, as I come to find out later on, learn, they were very Minnesota nice.
Mm-hmm.
Which was, you know, I mean, I wasn't expecting anything else, but people were nice. It was better than I expected. It was much better than I expected. That summer of 2019, Naomi invited me to be a panelist with her at the 29th conference to discuss my experience. And that panel was Alliance, at that time, Alliance of Artists Communities Conference, Rural Residencies, Artist Engagement Strategies plus Success Story Session. And I forgot the name of the Black gentleman who was on the panel with us, but the residency was somewhere down south.
Was it Carlton Turner? Yes, right? Maybe. Because Carlton and Brandy run a program called Sip Culture down in Mississippi.
Yes. That was it. That was definitely it. Yes. It was more than 300 participants, including representatives from at least 150 artist communities. We were in St. Paul, Minnesota. So that was my second time there that year. And the theme was fair practice to explore how programs engage artists are evolving their processes and practices to be stable yet responsive. And the conference often opened up with your intro, which is usually leave with artists.
Well, we know that, right? Like I tell everyone, I was on a call, we had a board meeting yesterday, and I said, remember, we always lead with the artists because artists are at the center of our work. There's no artist residency without the artist.
Without the artist.
Period. Like it just doesn't exist. It's not a truth. It's not something. So, and of course, I learned both the easy way and the hard way that if you don't lead with the artist, you can have very different outcomes in terms of experience. So yeah, lead with the artist.
And there was 2 performances. There was a actor, dancer, and playwright, Sunmi Chomet. Am I pronouncing their name right?
Yes.
And then there was I can't pronounce it. There was a
I can't pronounce it either.
Jarrell Barton.
Yes, Jarrell. And do you remember there was at the closing point that we had one of our diversity and leadership fellows that met Jarrell, and they played together. And it was this beautiful collaboration, but it was this moment. It was their first conference, both for Jarrell and that DNL fellow, and their name escapes me at this moment, but they met there. And by the end, they had been practicing at night together over the duration of the conference. And they did this impromptu performance. It was beautiful.
And that's one of the perks of attending is seeing some of the artists perform, whether they're dancer, instrumental. Yeah. This is a quote somebody had said, as a first-time attendee, it became clear that those who work in the residency field do so out of love for the arts and artists who make that art. This year's conference served as a reminder of that and of the value that work holds in the wider world. And that was Julia Tolo, who was the institutional giving manager at McDowell, had said that.
McDowell is one of what we would consider one of the founding organizations for ACA. And maybe there's always a debate between McDowell and Yaddo, which one of them came online first and was the first artist residency in the US. But they have been such a supporter of all the work that we've done. And they stay kind of lock in step with us, even no matter what. They give time generously, they participate, they make sure their staff participate. I mean, it's one of these things. We're not just ancillary to their work. And so over this past few years, I think his former now, but Philip Hinman was the executive director. He had left Sundance and started there, but he really went really deep on them thinking about equity, justice and inclusion, and how to embody that. And it was really I mean, they're just at the start of it. I mean, it takes years to be an anti-racist organization, and we may never ever see it. We like to think we're there, but that commitment they had to do in that work has just been wonderful. They're one of many organizations that I sing the praises of, but they were very public and transparent about their processes. So I appreciate them for that.
So one thing that I liked about the conferences was the tours. I remember that when we were in Denver, we went to a glass making facility. Well, it was at a college. It was at some kind of an arts college or artistic place. But we went, and I just remember that there was glass making going on.
It was at Temple, wasn't it? What is it called?
Was that in Denver?
School. No, it wasn't in Denver. That's Philly. I'm thinking Philly. Oh, I'm drawing blank. Okay, go ahead. I have to think about this a little bit.
So I just don't, it was, I don't remember where we really went in Denver, because that is kind of, a ways back. But I remember in Philly, we went to the Colored Girls Museum, and that was located at a home.
Yes.
And I remember we even went upstairs. Well, it was like two or three levels, but that was really cool. What stood out in my mind the most was in St. Paul, going to the African-American community of Rondo, which was demolished between 1956 and 1968 to make way for Interstate 94. It had displaced over 650 families, and it created a loss of over $100 million in wealth for that community. So what I like about the conferences and the conferences is, meeting and engaging other artists, obviously learning more about the business and administrative side, but learning about more artist residencies as I did 18th Street Art Center and Hinge, but going into the community and learning the history of the community and meeting more artists at their locations and to see where they create their art. That's what I like the most, besides the food.
And I'm glad our food was good, because Deb and Flan will work very hard to make sure this. I was like, don't serve me.
Sometimes there's sack lunches, but they're still good.
Good.
The sack lunches are good too. And I had met Sharice, who works at Ulite.
Yes. Sharice, who's at Ulite.
Sharice,
I remember in Denver, because she went on. Interestingly enough, she went on that tour to Anderson Ranch, and she's from Miami, and it started snowing when they went up in those mountains. And I remember she came back and she said it was snowing. It was a pre-conference activity, and now Ulite has this really rich partnership with Anderson. So it's just interesting. Yeah, they take their fellows there and take over the whole center. But that's Miami to Aspen, that's a big deal, because Miami's nice all the time.
I remember that, and I was like, no, I wasn't interested in that, because I knew it was already cold. Last time I saw her we were in Philly, and we had some delicious Indian food. It was so good, and we've kept in contact over the years, me and her. She's a sweet lady.
Hi, my name is Ray Landres. I'm working between art and fashion photography. And the biggest advice I would give to my younger self is to really push back when people say no to you. It's really important to test the limits and really understand where it is that you can go. And sometimes institutions will tell you no really quickly. When you hear a no from an institution, it's usually something that is a soft limitation, and especially for people of color that have been pushed to the margins of the conversation for so long in the art world, it's important for us to make space and push back against those no's and really understand that there is space for us, and people like us need to be here.
I had an artist residency, didn't find out about this one through ACA, but it was at Firefly Farms, and while I was there, they slaughtered a lamb, and I ended up eating some, as they call them, Rocky Mountain oysters, some lamb's nuts. And so it was just interesting, to be in that environment on the farm, and then to see them slaughter and be in the room, and it was different. But I was like, I was there for the whole.
Listen, got to go for the experience. If you're there, went in Firefly Farms, Firefly Farms.
Well, that you know of, do most artists of color, do they always feel comfortable at the residencies that they go to, their experiences?
And I say this because it's a truth. No, not always do they feel safe and comfortable or welcome. And that could be just by the environment that surrounds the residency. Like sometimes residencies, I call them hostile territories, or just places where people who have a very different way of life and very different political, religious, and ideological views are there, and they're not prepared for that experience. And there's still some artifacts from what I consider times in the period of enslavement and colonial thinking that govern these spaces, and money and capitalism. And we wish that we could just say it doesn't exist, but we know it does.
Yeah.
And it can come out in the actual experience. So that's why we always try to think, really talking about the people who power residencies. We know happy arts workers equal happy artists equal happy arts workers. There's some reciprocity in that.
And beautiful artwork.
Yes. And we got to advocate for that. So we're always thinking about that particular environment where people feel welcome, safe, and cared for, but not just the artist and not just the arts worker, but what does it look like when all of that is in relationship? So it's work. We're learning, but people are.
How did the artist residencies community, how did everything shift once the pandemic started?
It was tough. I mean, we shut down our office. It was the end of our lease that September, and we immediately halted, put the brakes on the conference and staff travel and things of that nature. But more like long term, we just went totally virtual. We took all of our programming online, really pursued it through that lens. We worked on a strategic plan. We started to think about how we might do things differently. We expanded our staff. So now we have a national staff, which has really been fantastic. And that was a big shift for us because we are known for our conferences. People know ACA's conference. It's fun. It's welcoming. We have activities. So that's been hard for us. And we're really looking at what we can do differently in the next couple of years. We really want to get more to a hybrid model where anybody can participate online, but also that we have those in-person convenings where folks can be next to each other, because that's the hallmark of our field. Like, I don't think about virtual residencies, people do, but I like in-person community, talking, engaging. That's nice.
And I was disappointed because I was looking forward to it in Miami. Love Miami. So I was really disappointed. When is the next one? Have you guys figured, you said virtually?
Yeah, we haven't figured out when the next large summit style convening will be. But we're going to start off with some small convenings regionally, like, whether it's going to the Midwest or down South, just start to activate centers and get people really excited again, hear what they want and what they would like to do differently. But my goal is to land back in Miami. I want to finish what we started.
We're going to pick up from there, right?
Yeah, we had
That's
an
great.
incredible host committee down there. We had so much support.
And they're waiting.
And they're waiting, and Ulite, and it's so much. I mean, it's just amazing. It on multiple levels. It's like I can't even describe it. It's an amazing experience.
Lisa, that's good to hear. Like that is good to hear.
We're going to Miami.
We have like 5 minutes.
Residencies like Ulite Arts is a big deal within Miami. It's a really great place to just network, make art, and it's one of the best places for artists in Miami.
Ulite Arts also has a number of great resources. There's access to people, studio visits, other artists that I might not have gotten if I wasn't part of the residency.
The act of supporting artists through grants, such as the Ellis, I think is empowering, and I think it's very helpful for artists, working artists within the city of Miami and any city. So I think it's a great pat in the back for all of those who are making stuff, making work, and trying to go to the next level.
Ulite Arts is a great community of people. The artists and the staff are able to help me when I have moments where I need to talk to someone, show people my work. It's a great community of people to discuss what I'm doing with.
I think my studio is my living space. It's a space in which I feel very comfortable. I feel free to do what I want to do, and it's freedom for me.
In June of 2020, there was, major social unrest due to the unlawful killing of George Floyd by 4 Minnesota police officers. How did the ACA and affiliated artists and organizations, how did they respond?
Yeah.
Or what did you think about the response from the arts community regarding what happened in St. Paul, Minnesota?
I have a lot of opinions about that. And one thing about ACA, and I appreciate you kind of talking about the arc of history of the conferences and my day one and so forth. We always have been, equity has been at the center. Black Lives Mattering has always been key and central to our dialogue. And one thing for us, we felt like the best thing we could do as an organization is keep doing and improving what we're doing and not letting our foot off the gas pedal in terms of talking about equity, talking about equitable capacity, talking about why Black Lives Matter and why this is important, pointing to the statistics, talking about harm and hurt that happens either in towns or in very specific places. So we didn't want to put out statements and platitudes and this long art of commitment, because actually the proof was in our history and the way that we had been doing the work thus far. And I feel like that was to our benefit, and people knew us. They knew they could lean on, they knew that this is what we represented and we could actually help guide. Other parts of the arts community, I think there were a lot of platitudes. I think there were a lot of promises. I think there have been a lot of like, we're going to do this. And I feel like things are slipping away and slipping back. Gives me great concern. But, you know, we're here and we talk about what we witness and observe. And we'll be talking about that too, because it is important. It doesn't, things don't change after an event or after a media cycle. We have to stay committed to this work. And I try to be a thoughtful messenger and daylight things where I can, but yeah.
You wrote quite a bit during that period of time, and you were posting things on ACA's blog. This is something towards the end of one of your statements. As James Baldwin asked nearly 30 years ago, how much time do you want for your progress? He was not speaking from a place of bitterness, and neither am I. Without honesty, we cannot change. This is an offering imbued with love and hope. This is an invitation to do better and work on behalf of justice. The time is now. That was one of your statements.
The time is now.
And you had posted, there's several things on the ACA website regarding people can access information regarding anti-Black, what was it? There's a list of
resources around anti-racism and things that we learned. We try to keep a pretty active resource, especially at the start of the pandemic. We felt it was important to push out good information, even if it wasn't content that was being generated from us. We wanted to share what has been working, and so much, and so many folks had really, really thoughtful ways for people to engage. And when you're serving a predominantly white field, it's important to leverage that platform and share information as much as possible. So folks can go to it. And folks can reach out to us too. We're only informed by artists and artist workers, right? Like we only know what people tell us and what they share with us. So I always have an open invitation to reach out to me. Now I might be a little slow sometimes on a response, so always copy somebody else in the organization on it. But I want to hear from people, because I only grow from relationships, but I don't know what I don't know. And I mean, that's the only reason why I've been able to do anything, is because somebody shared something with me. So
right. What advice do you have for African Americans who will find themselves in positions where they're often the only Black person in the room?
Remember that you love yourself and don't compromise you. Sometimes we get in these spaces and we feel as a protection mechanism or whatever. And sometimes you do have to code switch and employ certain survival techniques. But remember, you love yourself, because I think the lowest points that I've ever felt being in spaces like this is when I leave and then I self-judge myself. And I'd like, did I do this? Did I? And then it was Brother Resma Menachem. He's a psychologist out of Minnesota. He's wrote a lot of books, but he says, you know, he always starts off, he says, Black people, you are not defective, right? And when he says that,
how do you spell it? Is his name spelled like R-E-Z?
Resma, R-E-S. We are not defective. And so that coming into self of learning to love me in that moment and embrace who I am has helped me a lot with like shame and feeling otherized, or worrying about what I said or how I said, or how did I look? Was my hair out of place? Did they see it? You know, that's a constant thing. And being in all white spaces forces you to analyze yourself in that way. So you got to remember to love yourself in that space and to love yourself in that moment. And what did somebody told me once, I don't know where I read it. It was somebody Black I know. And it's like, straighten up your shoulders and remember who the fuck you are and get out there. And I heard that. I heard that.
Right? Yeah. And work.
Work and get out there. And that's what I do. I was like, straighten up them shoulders.
You do.
Yeah.
The Directory of Artist Residencies is published online.
Yes.
I haven't looked at it in several years. How often is it revised, and where, I mean, I know it's online, but where can you direct artists to see it at?
Well, it's under our it's actually considered and called the residency directory. We have a new website,
Okay.
and what you're seeing it now is with that new website, we cleaned up our database. I mean, so all of the defunct artist residencies, folks that may have started and didn't finish and so forth, all of that information's been cleaned up. And what we're doing, I would say, it's being renewed weekly because we're putting new folks in, we're getting information up to date and accurate, but it's much more user friendly and easier to understand what you are looking at. It's not this little box that is not accessible or text friendly with just a snippet of information. It's almost like opening up a whole new web page. So I tell people to go to that. If you have questions or feedback, we're still evolving. That new website is not even a year old now. So we're still very much in people telling us what they need and what they want more of. So,
So my friend Jennifer Baker, she's a writer, editor, and about 2 years ago, she was talking about the James Baldwin artist residency, Baldwin for the Arts residency. I didn't know quite what it was. I mean, well, I knew it was artist residency, but I hadn't heard about it, and I wasn't interested because the pandemic and stuff wasn't applying.
Right.
But then I went to a party in November called the Harlem Feet for BIPOC writers, people in the publishing community. And I found out that the acclaimed writer Jacqueline Woodson is the person who it's her artist residency. She created it, and it's been around since 2018. You know, so I talked to her and everything, and applications are open for the residency now and everything. So I was just like, it's like, okay, I can see myself there. Yeah, it looks like it's a great, fabulous residency.
The work I do is considered young people's literature, but I like to think it's for all people who are curious and thinking about the world and thinking about how they can have an impact on it. My name is Jacqueline Woodson, and I'm a writer. I love writing. I've always loved writing. I write because I have questions, and I write because I have thoughts I want to express, and I think if I do it well enough, if the reader falls in love with the story or with the characters, they're going to come away from that book thinking about things differently. I write books that I hope young people can see themselves inside of and see their experiences inside of. And if they can't, hopefully they'll see other experiences. And when you see other people on the page and when you learn their stories, you gain empathy, you gain an understanding, and your world becomes bigger and better.
I was going to ask you if you had the time, funding, what kind of artist residency you would create, but you're short on time, so you don't have to.
Can I answer that? I can answer that if you want me to.
Oh, well, let me ask you that. If you had the land, the funding, the time, the staff, and other needed resources, what type of artist residency would you create?
Now, see, I talk about this with my wife often, right? Like, because she worked in the artist residency field too. So this is, we're familiar, right? Like, so we understand. And we keep saying, like, we're not aging backwards, we're aging forward, right? Like, and it's not talking about being older or elder, but what does the community look like for the older artists, the older queer artists, that are together exploring ideas and talking and relating and reminiscing and cultivating and nourishing. So I think it would be a place that is incredibly accessible, incredibly beautiful, and surrounded by beauty and lush, good food, but separate dwellings.
It sounds like a place I want to visit.
Yeah, right. Where people can go off and go to sleep and not be bothered. They're like, I ain't got time for you right now, right? I just want to sit here and be in my own space in this comfort. But where we could come together and talk and be together in fellowship as folks that have seen some things and been through some things. But it is very much about beauty and exchange and some reciprocity. But I think the key thing is just being a little bit older in community together, and being very clear for BIPOC and primarily Black bodies, because that is, we have to like get in the spaces so much. What does it mean to really think about that? Just being there together. Yeah, I think about that a lot.
Field Conversations is coming up on the March 15th, 2023 at 1 p.m.
Yes.
And your Field Conversations.
Yeah, those are topics that I pick and I share with the staff that I want to attack for the year and think about and be in discussion and conversation with other people. This one is called The Aftermath. So it's like, now that we are 3 years coming up on the 3rd year anniversary of George Floyd's brother George Floyd's passing and the murder of brother George, what's happening? Because it's like we said earlier, there've been a lot of platitudes, there've been a lot of stories, people have been talking about what they're going to do. And I'd like to be in a space with other Black people to talk about what they've seen, what they've witnessed, and what do we need to go for it, without making it about depending on the system for that forward movement, right? So where are we going? What's our world building thought around this, and what part of that do we want to share with this audience, because some of that is not everything is for everyone.
Right, that is
Next
true.
week marks the 1-year anniversary of George Floyd's murder in Minneapolis. His death at the hands of police touched off global protests and a worldwide artistic response. Special correspondent Fred DeSam Lazaro reports from Minneapolis. It's part of our series, Race Matters, America After George Floyd, and our ongoing arts and culture coverage, Canvas.
On plywood and sidewalks, brick walls and windows, creative expressions from this year of racial reckoning now envelop the city that sparked a movement.
In the days following his death, George Floyd's image became an icon around the world. Here in the city of Minneapolis, there's been an explosion of public art featuring Floyd's face, his last words, and on a broader theme of racial justice.
Artist Peyton Scott Russell grew up near 38th Street and Chicago Avenue in South Minneapolis, the intersection where George Floyd was killed on May 25th, 2020. Peyton remembers the first time he watched the video of Floyd's death.
I just kept seeing my father's face on George's face. I thought I was alone in how I felt, the anger that I felt in that moment. And I was just, I wanted to go out and physically protest. And then I had a few people tell me that I had a stronger voice than to go out and physically protest, which was my art voice as a street artist.
So Peyton got to work on what would become one of the most recognized depictions of George Floyd, a 12-foot black and white mural that, for the past year, has been perched just above the spot where Floyd drew his last breath.
There were times that I was weeping painting the picture, and I had to take breaks, and seeing that face that large and painting it that way with that black and white was really profound to me as I painted it. My original thought was I was going to install this at night as an act of street art anonymously and paint Mr. Floyd's face as large as I could as a way to say, look what you did, look, just put it somewhere that was just really intrusive as an obstacle. My first idea was to bolt it into the middle of the street on the intersection of 38th and Chicago.
But Peyton realized a stiff breeze could knock the mural over, or it could be taken by the city. So he arrived at 38th and Chicago, and a group of about 30 people, some strangers, helped bolt it to the bus shelter where it sits today.
I've been contacted to give permission to use that piece in a number of backgrounds and stories, and I've been really careful about, am I really morally that person to say yes or no, who can use this and who can't? Because I painted it for the community, and I needed to let it go and let the community own it, and that's what really street art is all about.
Over the past 12 months, countless pieces have been left at the intersection now known as George Floyd Square. Posters and handwritten notes, flower bouquets, and drawings. Some have made their way here to a pop-up exhibition near the square called Still Here, Unstolen, Unbroken.
They were
protest signs.
Janelle Austin is the lead caretaker. We spoke to her at the Say Their Names Cemetery, a makeshift memorial for black people killed by police. It's just steps from the exhibit.
I like to call it creative expressions of pain and hope instead of art, and really honoring the people who have laid offerings down first and foremost as protest and then also as public grief. Everything is somebody's offering, therefore nothing is thrown away.
Austin had a specific vision: remind people of the emotion during those early days of protest.
We are building a rememory. The space itself, the offerings themselves, calls people into a place where they remember where we were, they remember where they were, and they are then commissioned to continue the work of racial justice.
So it was kind of like an embrace that pulled people back to the time.
Exactly.
Austin hopes to eventually raise funds for a permanent space large enough to fit all these offerings, as well as a traveling exhibit. But she's been deliberate about the sources of that funding. She chose not to take money from the city of Minneapolis.
When I look at the story of the lynching of George Floyd, I see a city employee on city time that killed a man.
It's holding those two contradictions. It's saying, can we trust you?
Gulgun Kayam, the city's director of arts, culture, and the creative economy, says the killing of George Floyd broke down the trust it took years to build between the city, local artists, and underserved residents.
These are the literal communities we're in every day. Our work is at 38th and Chicago, and looking at what happened, it really was a sense of despair on my part in seeing all that hard work really disappear with the action of one person.
After Floyd's killing and the unrest, Kayam's office repurposed $100,000 in grants for artists responding to the events. One went to Creatives After Curfew, a collective that painted a series of murals across the city. Minneapolis native Leslie Barlow is part of the group.
The murals that we started making, of course, on one hand, were a way to process what was going on, a way to grieve in community, and to also share these particular stories and messages. But also, it was a way to heal and connect with each other, because watching or hearing about George Floyd's murder in isolation, right, when we had all been separate for a couple months, at that point with the pandemic, was incredibly difficult. You didn't even have to talk, actually, right? Like, even just the act of painting, processing in that way can be very healing for some people, and, speaking for myself.
And with messages of solidarity, black liberation, police abolition, Barlow says who created the murals mattered.
We were seeing a lot of non-black artists taking up a lot of space. That really ignited something in me. If it's a movement for Black lives, those folks should be able to tell their own stories.
Barlow says there were challenges in deciding where to paint, too.
Something I saw last summer was businesses using black trauma as a way to protect their property, right? So they are putting up boards, asking artists to come do murals, and don't actually align with the messages that are in the murals. It's a very performative act.
So you think that some businesses were commissioning artists to make murals so that their businesses wouldn't be attacked if there was unrest?
Oh, absolutely. That was happening, all over.
1 year later, Barlow sees a dual purpose in the work.
I hope that the murals now are both, an archive of that time, but also a kind of liberatory space where people can strive for the messages, right, that are being portrayed.
For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Fred DeSam-Lazaro in Minneapolis.
And Fred's reporting is a partnership with the Undertold Stories Project at the University of St. Thomas in Minnesota.
This is Black History Month, so before you go, I have to ask you this question. Why is celebrating Black history important to you as an African-American woman? And do you have any special plans?
I don't have any special plans. I'll probably do some traveling, see my children, because I love Black. I love Blackness. I love everything. I love Black culture. I love learning new hip hop songs. I love dancing. I love fellowship. I love church. Like, I love me some us. And I love Black women writers. I think, there's a brilliance that exists out in this world. And it's important to celebrate that because, you know, if we got to turn a lens on this to say we got to remember to uplift those folks around us, then we got to do it. If we're not paying attention, if we're so busy with other stuff that we can't hit pause and remember to say I love you to our siblings, then something's wrong. And I love Black people, and that's who I want to be around. I love it. Like, I love Blackness, and yeah, that's one thing I got from my parents. They love Blackness too. So, you know,
that's good to hear. That is good to hear because, you know, a lot of, Anyway, real quick, that community in St. Paul, Minnesota, the Rondo community, instead of a sentimental tweet today, I'm humbled to honor Dr. King's legacy by announcing that the City Council has paused our Inheritance Fund proposal. Some folks from that community, they're going to be eligible for $110,000 in assistance for a housing trust fund to help them purchase homes. And then there's also the homeowner rehab programming, which is just that to rehab, I guess, you know, old homes or whatever. And that's going to offer up $120,000 in assistance. So that community is finally getting some form of, you know, reparations.
You know, and if you ever want to talk again, there's an incredible artist that my wife introduced to me. He and his wife is Setu Jones and his wife Soyini. They live in Rondo. They were part of Frogtown Farms where we went to visit. And they have invested in state, but he's actually going to build an artist residency protecting Black archives and the legacy of Black artists. And somewhat has an enterprise model. So it's going to be really interesting what he's doing and how he's thinking about it.
You mentioned George Floyd, and I know that the year after what happened to him, somebody, you know, because I know all that artwork was created, all that stuff was created. Have you been back to Minnesota since 2019?
Yes, I have. Yeah. I've been there, and I went down George Floyd's way, and I saw the artwork and a lot of tributes and some incredible installations, but you know, it's a conflicted feeling.
Of course.
You know, but I'm talking with some community members. I experienced it with my wife and another colleague. It was important to talk about that conflict, but it was also important to stay close to it because, you know, it felt like a pilgrimage of sorts. Like, you know, I shed a lot of tears over George Floyd and continued to shed tears over all the Black lives lost since then and even before then. And it's a conflict of being there, but also not getting too far away from it while we got to continue our work. Because
speaking of continuing work, I'm going to close this out. Since 2017, I've applied for the 18th Street Art Center residency. So I recently applied a few months ago, and they say third time's the charm. I was recently awarded artist residency for 4 months at the end of this year, but 4 months is too long for me, so I accepted 3 months. And it's for me to work on my documentary film, Renewed Life, and to be accepted as an artist and an emerging filmmaker at this point in time in my life and my career, after a decade of leaving from Los Angeles to return and to go there to, you know, SoCal's biggest artist residency. It was just a really great way for me to bring in the new year and to make up for a lot of rejection that I had been experiencing. So it was just awesome news. Very happy, you know, and excited to be looking forward to that. So
this candidate does not have much money, has no national organization backing, and not even a major campaign committee here in the Los Angeles area. But this candidate feels she has the spirit to go after the big guys.
I see the nation as the artwork and the people as the artist.
As a performance artist, should you move into the White House, do you have any plans? Would there be any plans for changes?
In the White House?
Yeah.
Turn it into an alternative art space.
From its founding in 1988, 18th Street Art Center has provoked public dialogue through contemporary art making. 18th Street artists have used the art-making process to confront difficult social issues.
The 18th Street Art Center was always on the cutting edge. It was a place for people that may not be welcome other places. It was a place for experimental work. And currently, I think it's important to support it because of the worldwide population of artists that it brings together in residence, which informs the LA County community and enriches it, I think, enormously.
18th Street supports artists in pushing critical issues into the social consciousness.
At 18th Street, we allow artists to be artists. Give people the tools, give artists the space, and get the hell out of their way. They will do what they do, and it will be brilliant.
18th Street believes in a culture that encourages collaboration, cultural exchange, equity, and radical human exploration. We believe that artists can contribute to society in a very profound way. Since our founding, thousands of exceptional artists have used 18th Street's dynamic campus as a platform to question, challenge, and propose new possibilities for the world. We believe that art making is an essential component of a vibrant, just, and healthy society. We invite you to experiment with us, grow with us, and build community with us. Let's change the world together, one artist at a time.
I really wanted to spread the idea that every citizen is a potential artist who is capable of co-creating something very positive in this country. 18th Street Arts Center is an example of what I was talking about, only talking during the campaign. So this is solid, this is here. So thank you to everybody.
The Alliance has played a big role in my arts career and, you know, doors opening for me and other opportunities. And I am thankful for that. Thankful for the work that you do on behalf of us, on behalf of the arts community.
Thank you, Nahshon, and congratulations, firstly, well-deserved, overdue, but more importantly, this is what it's about. You know, I'm not looking for 500, but each one, because each one of us carry and affect someone else. So thank you for what you're doing. And thank you for inviting me. This is great. Like, I could just be with you forever. Like, in this time and space continuum we're in.
I wish we weren't cut short for time, but I know we are. The film, it's based on my life, survival, and my artistic journey, but it's also a blueprint to show marginalized youth the importance of self-respect and how to reach their full potential and shine with dignity when their rainbow is blurred.
Yes.
As mine was, but not as much as it used to be. I'm trying to answer these two questions. How does one escape violence and manage the effects of violence, particularly chronic mental health issues, when their community is plagued with violence and continue working towards their goals? The second question is, how does one survive a destructive community and society without doing further horrendous harm? So, yeah.
It's a story of abolition too, isn't it? It's about,
you know,
yeah.
To so many degrees, it is, you know, and we're born into situations, things happen, things move you, you know, sometimes you wish, you know, it hadn't happened or wasn't you, but what do? You know, you have to figure out a way to cope and to exist and to live in this world. And the arts and writing and all of that has helped me. And, you know, yeah.
Yeah, disrupting the cycles and paving a way for a new way to do it. I appreciate you for that. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to be with us, to be with me and my audience, TRANSBRATIONS, my guests. Enjoy your Black History Month and your Women's History Month too. Oh, you can't see it. Oh yeah, you can. This was the letter from 18th Street about the artist residency. So I'm gonna have to edit. I'll edit this into the segment later or whatever. But yeah, I wanted to show you that. I know you got it.
You're gonna have to get to it.
Oh, I know. It's by the beach. It's home. It's home. It's home. Yeah. Lisa, thank you so much for the time. Thank you. The pre-interview, this, and yes, I would love to see you in February. That would be great.
Okay. Love you.
Bye-bye, sweetie. Stay safe. Stay safe.
You too. All right. Bye-bye.
Oh, enjoy.